Hey, Legal Rebels, this is Tom Martin. I'm the founder of LawDroid, and this is my podcast, LawDroid Manifesto, where I interview legal innovators about how they do what they do.
In this episode, I interview Colin Lachance, principal consultant at PGYA and co-founder of Lachance, whose unique ability to bridge law, technology, and education has empowered countless lawyers to understand and embrace AI transformation. Welcome to the LawDroid Manifesto podcast. I'm Tom Martin, your host, and I'm really thrilled today to have Colin Lachance. He is a good friend, and I think the world of him, really. He's done some really amazing work. We're contemporaries, so we get a lot of the references. He is the principal consultant at PGYA, and he is also a builder with Lachance. And with that, I'd like to throw it to you, Colin. Tell us a little bit more about what you're up to.
Sure, Tom. Thanks. And thanks for having me here. Big fan of LawDroid Manifesto. What I'm up to, I'll start with PGYA. It's a consultancy I set up 10 years ago. I revive it from time to time, depending on what my other priorities are. But basically, it's been about assisting folks handling transformation in the legal market. In the past couple of years, that's been exclusively around AI. When I set out to say, well, I'm going to create a consultancy. What am I going to call it? I chose PGYA for a couple of reasons. One, nice short URL. The other is because it stands for Please Govern Yourself Accordingly. and my original tagline on the original website was, the legal market is changing. Please govern yourself accordingly. Lachance is actually grown out of a consulting project from PGYA. So a little over a year ago, I began a role as a consultant to the Ontario Bar Association as their innovator in residence. They engaged me to develop programming to help lawyers understand and begin to partner with AI. And through that, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but I developed with some partners an online learning platform that used AI to help lawyers learn AI. And the name of the digital AI twin inside that platform was Lachance. Now, Lachance has grown to become a company, Lachance Learning Inc. And Lachance Learning Inc. is focused on delivering similar programming and online tools to bar associations across the US.
That's a lot you got going on.
As fun as it is to help people with big AI problems, and as fun as it is to help people learn AI and develop programs around that, there was a part missing. So at the beginning of this year, I reactivated my Ontario law license with the intent of finding a work environment where I could actually practice as a lawyer on a part-time basis to implement a lot of these cool things that were around, to show that it's possible to do. In the end, I actually wound up finding the right place in Alberta, in the city of Red Deer, halfway between Calgary and Edmonton. There was a small personal injury firm run by Donna Purcell, great innovator, herself a former top 25 most influential lawyers from Canadian Lawyer magazine. We got to talking about the state of her firm, the state of her information technology, her broader vision. She had approached me on a consulting opportunity, and I said, Donna, I don't want to consult for you. I want to work for you. So I'm now in the process of reclaiming my Alberta law license, which was my original one, so I can actually help her within that one firm scope out and implement appropriate AI and accelerators within her practice. And it's been a phenomenal learning experience. And for me, those were the three legs of the stool. Big picture for consulting, hands-on learning for people moving through it, and truly experiencing the reality of what attorneys have to deal with when they're considering AI.
I think that's really awesome because not only are you, it's not a top-down thing, you're also looking from the bottom up to see
Absolutely
whether or not what you're going to build or what you communicate to people actually aligns with their interests and their needs.
Yes.
Just as a side note, it really aligns with this framework that I've been thinking of in terms of businesses going forward, is that they can't solely be software businesses, they can't solely be services or consulting businesses, that you actually have to triangulate on three separate things, being, education, services, and software, and combining those, and you're doing that.
I think that's absolutely right. Right now, they feel separate, but they won't remain separate for most professionals. There will be some element of how they can dynamically incorporate software into their offerings. Many people are doing it now, and I think most of us will, as professionals, lawyers especially, in the near future.
Well, it's really impressive that you have the time to be doing all these different things. And I definitely want to get more into that and some of the topics that are currently afoot. But before we do that, as the audience knows, I love to get into people's origin stories. And you're a fellow Canadian. You're in Ottawa right now, right?
I'm in Ottawa. Yeah.
Has it turned yet? Like, has it started raining or?
Yeah, it has just started raining. So we're in our first fall. We don't have 4 seasons, we have 7 or 8 seasons. So at the end of summer, we have first fall, then we get second summer, then we get a second fall, and sometimes a third summer. So we're guaranteed like a hot stretch at some point in September, and sometimes a hot stretch in October. But in between, yeah, we're starting to experience the moisture.
I see. Well, here on the other side of the country in Vancouver, it's almost like clockwork Labor Day, and then like a sheet of rain comes down and it doesn't stop for about 10 months. So,
Yeah.
uh, anyway, I'd like to ask you where you grew up. Did you grow up in Ottawa?
No, I grew up in Winnipeg. So born and raised in Winnipeg. My family is brother, sister, parents, all still there. My in-laws, all in the province of Manitoba as well too. So Winnipeg was home, although I haven't lived there in a little over 30 years now.
For those that aren't familiar with Winnipeg, and in particular, like the part of Winnipeg that you grew up in, what was that like? What was that experience like?
Winnipeg was phenomenal on many levels. Highly recommended, especially if you visit in August when everything is perfect. The mosquitoes are gone, the snow hasn't arrived. Winnipeg has always, at least in my lifetime, been the global city in the middle of nowhere. It has always had an incredibly diverse community. Always had all the things you want in a major center. Its heyday was a little over 100 years ago when it accurately styled itself as the Chicago of the North. It was the gateway city to Western Canada to the north and a lot of things. So the architecture dating back 100 plus years ago is just amazing. It's incredible. Growing up in Winnipeg was very much an experience of a small enough city to be able to get your whole hands around, a large enough city that it attracted people from all over the world, and it had connections and capabilities to push forward. I grew up in a couple different neighborhoods. In one of them, the second one is called Fort Richmond. I lived about a 5 minute walk from the University of Manitoba. My high school was the closest to that university, so very early on, that location became part of my life. And actually, it wasn't from going there as a student that got me interested into law. It was going there as a summer camper when I was 10 years old.
Oh, wow. Yeah, those early experiences kind of, I remember for me, like they open up that as a distinct possibility. It doesn't seem like something that's out there that other people do. It's like, well, I've been there, I've seen it, I've experienced it, right?
Yeah, I was the first one to actually go to university in my family, but it was a no-brainer having grown up there. And as I mentioned, I did summer camps there. They held these wonderful day camps. It was when I was exposed to the law that sort of put it in my head, like, yeah, I should do that at some point. I think that's the career I'd want to give a try.
I'm sorry, what age did that start that you went to that camp?
10. It was
10.
just summer, like, regular kids' summer day
Yeah.
camps. It just happened to be at the university and happened to incorporate these opportunities to get exposed to the discipline. Although at that time, computer science was a mix of Unix terminals and punch cards. So, so it didn't catch my attention.
What was it about the law at that age, at 10, that it was like, and I know that you were there for a few years, but what about it captured your attention? Like, what was the thing that stuck out to you?
I liked playing games as a kid, board games and all that. The exposure to the concept of rule making, application. Again, we're not talking about deep exposure, right? It's like sometimes it's sort of a variation of what you might have seen on TV, but you feel like you're closer to it because somebody's explaining to you a secret. And so I think that might have been it more than anything is law as an operating system of society. It wouldn't have been described and I wouldn't have interpreted it in those words at that time, but that's the vibe, is that there's a whole special set of knowledge and group of people that are involved in making things work, whether it's commerce, whether it's protection of rights, whether it's government, all of these things. And so it kept it in my head that that was something I wanted to do, but it never had any exposure. Never met a lawyer until I was in university. It's the first time I ever even met a lawyer.
Okay, before we jump ahead, how big was your family?
Older brother, younger sister. And then my parents had large families, so pretty big extended family throughout Manitoba.
And what did they do?
My dad was in construction superintendent for the province of Manitoba. Worked his way through the trades to broaden his skill set gradually, sort of get further and further up, and that was on the basis of a GED and just hard work and training. My mom was stay at home for a good stretch at the beginning, but she was like typing reports for university students to earn some money. And then when my brother and sister and I got a little bit older, she went back to work in schools, secretarial and other things. Also had an opportunity to discover her capabilities as a writer. And so she began to develop and explore that as well too, both mostly publicly, but not professionally, let's say.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like great lessons of hard work, stick-to-itiveness, and then your mother's creativity with her writing that probably had some influence on you.
Yeah, there was never any sense of limits. There was always both in my home and on the street where true like Gen X stereotype, like growing up, come home when the street lights go on, like that kind of stuff. Like get out in the morning, come home when the street lights come on. But there was never a sense where we grew up that we were limited in opportunities in any way, that everything was accessible. And I mean, part of it might have really just have been being so physically close to the university as a kid, and the assumption that, well, if you're at this high school and it's the closest one to the university, everybody's going to go to university. The absence of any sense of like, well, we can't work our way up or we can't do this. I didn't sense that at all.
When we've talked in the past, like I always find some things that we have in common, and that's another thing because very quickly, just my mom worked at Cal State LA, which was near our house, and so I naturally went to summer camps there.
That's funny.
It was a couple years, but
Yeah.
I had that same sense too. Like it just you're already there; it just feels possible.
Yeah.
And I think that's a wonderful way to frame things for a child who's growing up in it.
Yeah, and I kind of left out sort of the adolescent years where the proximity to the university meant access to the best arcade in the city, the best pool hall, at an age earlier than I should have, campus bars.
Those are good times. So you ended up going to University of Manitoba, right?
I did. So I knew I wanted to do law, but I wasn't convinced I wanted to be a lawyer as a career. But I said, this is something I will do. In Canada, there were some schools that would let you in on 2 years university and strong LSAT. Most of them required a degree. So I said, well, if I'm going to get a degree, what do I want? And as a kid, I was extremely ambitious in the area of commerce. Had sometimes multiple paper routes from the time I was 9. Was always the one out there selling the subscriptions so I could get the prize of a 6-pack of Coke for selling like 2 subscriptions, or like a trucker's wallet or something really meaningful. Chocolate bar sales for school fundraisers. I was one year I was the second highest salesman, with my brother being the first highest salesman in the same neighborhood. So I had this drive around business. So my first degree was a commerce degree. And I said, if I change my mind about law at some point, whether going or practicing, I'm taking a degree that I know I'll enjoy and I know will turn into something. And so I started that degree, really enjoyed it. Again, started to sort of indulge my urges for more, and I wound up working close to full time for my final 2 years of commerce concurrently with finishing the degree. I was working for the phone company selling phone systems and long distance plans to businesses.
Yeah, I saw that, and I mean, it sounds like you've always been an entrepreneur at heart.
Yeah, I rekindled the entrepreneurial nature that was always there.
So I usually ask what led people to law, but it's clear already that you had the seed of that from your experience with it at an early age. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that was the driver where you thought that would be a natural place to go.
Again, never had the self-awareness to perceive limitations at, at that age. So I thought, well, I can get in somewhere. My grades were okay, but I did well on the LSAT, well enough that I got a good offer at one of my target schools. I wound up going to University of Alberta.
You also went to the University of Ottawa later, about, I think, 10 years later. And
Much, yeah, more than that. So I finished the University of Alberta in 1997. And then fall of 2010, I started an LLM part-time at the University of Ottawa. So an LLM in law and technology. They had a phenomenal program. It's actually this year is the 25th anniversary of the existence of that program. Some pretty cool grads have come out of it. And so I was doing that part-time while working.
yeah, that's pretty amazing. And definitely before it was cool. I guess, how did the technology part fold into it? Because I definitely get the law, the influence in that, and the entrepreneurial drive. But the technology part, how did that come into it? What was your pull towards that?
In law school, the courses I really enjoyed and what I thought I was gravitating towards professionally was going to be in areas of employment and labor. Those were the things that excited me. I started working as an articling student, so Canadians know about the articling year for your international audience. It's that year after law school, but before you get called to the bar. It's like an apprenticeship year of sorts. So in that year, I was exposed to everything at a 20 lawyer firm. I was on my feet in court 60 times for a mix of contested and uncontested matters, dabble in everything, employment especially, and a number of other fields. But it still wasn't feeling quite right. And so, one day, a couple months before the end of my articling position, I saw a posting from the provincial phone company in Alberta for their regulatory department. It's basically admin law. And I think what a lot of admin law professionals will tell you is that they didn't understand admin law or enjoy it in university, but once they started practicing it, they said it's way better than any other area of law working in admin law. And so the regulatory department at TELUS was a really interesting environment. So obviously I wound up getting the job, leaving, finished my articling on a Friday, started in the regulatory department on a Monday. In TELUS, it wasn't a pure legal team. So my boss was an MBA. Her boss was an engineer. The vice president of the regulatory department was an accountant because telecom regulation is a strong mix of law, technology, economics, and public policy. And so effective multidisciplinary teams have to work together. They just can't assume a unique professional role and work at a distance at an arm's length. The technology part for me came from essentially spending my entire professional career from that point in 1998 up till now, what I call an arm's length from an engineer. There was always somebody who was working on the technical aspect of the thing that I was working on the legal aspect of, who was a colleague. And so getting exposed in depth and in detail to, remember, this is 1998, right? Like, so if we had internet at home, we had dial up for the most part.
Right.
So I'm getting exposed to the evolution of internet protocol and web standards and all of this. And I'm, learning and writing constantly about this because I have to argue it. And I have to, as an internal counselor, I have to explain the rules back to the business. So I was always a colleague with somebody who is highly technical in that part of my legal career. And at one point, I moved through a couple different roles in a couple different companies over the next 10, 12 years, and even had a stretch in there where I was a marketing director leading a $250 million portfolio and 8 product managers of wholesale telecom elements. Like, we're talking strings of fiber, dips into databases, all of these things that phone companies sell to each other. For 3 years, I was the marketing director of a good chunk of that
Wow.
because, again, just as understanding the law and the business and all these components is really necessary to be the lawyer, it was also really helpful to optimize the performance of the business to understand that part. So I was recruited into that function. But after a while, I got saying, okay, I want to get back to geeking out in law. And so that's why I started the program. But it wound up being the event or the trigger that actually led to me taking a completely different career path. That's been what I've been doing for the past 14, 15 years in legal tech, because I started that program And I saw a posting at the time, much like I did when I was articling, that caught my attention. And this was CANLI, the Canadian Legal Information Institute, had been operating for several years on the basis of a part-time interim or part-time manager, but its operations were governed by a board of directors representing each law society across the country, and its strategy was being developed by its supplier, a company called Lexham.
Hmm.
And so the owners of Canada, the law societies of Canada, decided that they wanted to take control of this place. So that meant they wanted a brand new board of directors that could apply the skills that you would want to have over top of a growing, increasingly important legal research tool. Because in 2010, it wasn't being used extensively or anywhere near it is now. It had lots of data gaps, and that was limiting usage. So they brought together a board that could do it, and then they said, well, now we need to get a CEO. So I applied on it, and I probably spent about 70 or 80 hours preparing my application to really sort of think through everything that I knew and didn't know and needed to know to understand how to make this place successful. And I showed up with essentially like my own strategic plan in the interview, and it happened to line up with what this board was considering as its strategic plan. So suddenly, the engineers that I was an arm's length for from switched from being network engineers to being software engineers, because now I'm running an organization that is it's a popular legal research website.
Colin, it's an amazing story arc. Like it's fantastic that from being a young boy exposed to law to, working with people and having the curiosity to see, the people that are working next to you that are technical is not just like other that they do that thing, but also that it's that you had a mind to like see the integration between the different roles and then bring it together. I mean, you had a few other experiences that we won't go into in depth, but like you had worked at VLEX for a while, and you had
Yeah,
worked
and that came
at,
later.
yeah,
Yeah,
and then later also the Legal Innovation Data Institute, which I think was a consequence of Canley. Canley is like a one-stop shop research destination where you can research case law across Canada, and it's free access to do that.
it has been for at least the past 12 years the most professionally used legal research tool in Canada. People use it more than Westlaw, more than Lexis, and it's fully free. All the cases, all of the statutes and regulations, a ton of tribunals. And one of the initiatives that I started when I was there was the introduction of secondary source materials. It's a phenomenal operation, fully funded by the lawyers of Canada through their dues. I would describe it to Americans often as an upside down fast case. Whereas fast case built out something that went to bars to sell it, to say you should look at this, you should bring it, make it available to your bar. In Canada, the concept began with the bars, the mandatory bars, the regulators deciding that digital legal information is essential to professional competence, and it's incredibly expensive, and the free stuff is spotty. So the only way you can ever achieve the competence goals is if the free stuff is top quality, and so that's how they began to fund it. I think it amounts to about $40 or $50 a year per lawyer right now, as extracted from their annual dues.
Yeah, pretty amazing. Instead of top down, bottom up, and benefit to everyone, a very
Yeah.
Canadian approach.
Yes. Yeah.
One of the things I love about your career is that you're constantly integrating things. So like one of the other moves, Compass Law,
Yeah.
like so again, dipping your feet back into the practice of law, and then from that, JurisSage, which I
Yeah.
definitely want to talk about.
I'll try and combine that, 2015 to 2023 period here in like a couple quick minutes. So while at Canley, I did things like created an API for the metadata, held a hackathon using that API and other things in 2013. I was not involved in the reinvent law movement, but inspired by it, concurrently as that activity was going. So my personal community expanded very heavily into the US and globally from people who were trying to realize new things with technology in law. Uh, so in 2015, when I left CanLead, it was a view to making that my full-time goal. I didn't know exactly how or where, but I was going to make it happen. In 2016, there was a small Canadian legal publisher called Maritime Law Book that announced it was shutting down. And a big issue in Canada was data access. Every country has a legal data access problem. Canada's is particularly acute because most courts don't publish the cases on their website. The information is not public domain. It's subject to Crown copyright. So publishers, the Lexis, the Canleys, the Westlaws, the Maritime Law Books, based on their decades-long relationship with courts, would receive the cases. Maritime Law Book shutting down ran the risk of removing one of the players from the board. And so I pulled together some people and we bought it. Operationally, it couldn't withstand on its own. Its software was incredibly dated, even though it was leading edge when it was first launched in the late 90s. But it was to get a hold of the historic data, which had a key number system similar to West. It was to assume their chair in the relationship with the courts to get that data. And it was to be able to actually act on the possibilities of technology. So when we launched Compass, it was in partnership with a group that was doing some really, really cool work in NLP, natural language processing at the time. For reasons I won't get into, that relationship soured very quickly with that with our initial partners. I had been talking to VLEX about cross-licensing our Canadian data into their platform and theirs into the one that we had developed. And with the collapse of my initial partnership, it shifted very quickly, and VLEX wound up taking a minority interest in Compass, as did Justia, well known to a lot of folks as a legal marketing company that also has been a major promoter of free law sources for decades through Justia and FindLaw before that. And so we set out to say, okay, let's make something happen, created the VLEX Canada platform. And then my function wound up morphing into supporting VLEX's activities in North America more broadly. But 2020, COVID hits. I'm looking at the fact that I still have this data source and we've advanced VLEX, but we haven't advanced Canada. So I had Compass license the data into a new nonprofit. So the LIDI, like Legal Innovation Data Institute, was not related to Canley in any way. It used the data that Compass had to make it available to partners who wanted to experiment with it. So we had brought in a number of partners. One was a really advanced machine learning business out of Alberta called AltaML. We had guidance from the Alberta Machine Intelligence Institute, one of the top AI labs globally, and just sort of trying in 2020 and 2021 to say, people, I will make this data available to help you learn, help figure it out. Commercially, it wasn't sustainable, but my partnership with AltaML extended into the creation of JurisAge with a view that saying, we know we can do this. We know we have the data, the people. Let's make something happen. We had built up some really cool stuff, some really incredible models, but 2022 comes and we had been playing with GPT-2 and GPT-3, but we saw what ChatGPT could do. We said, okay, well, most of what we just figured out, across the database, others will be able to figure out document by document very quickly. They don't know it yet, but we realized it. That led to an eventual merger between JurisAge and a company called SiteRight, who was working on managing books of authorities and citation document management, similar to like a little bit of what ClearBrief or BriefCatch do, not exactly the same. But there was a good opportunity to give JurisAge another shot at a future after having spent all the money. And so that allowed me to step back and take on other things as the people who ran SiteRight and now ultimately AltaML are running the new merged JurisAge.
It's absolutely amazing and impressive. Like, again, just jumping between these different worlds. And how do you do that? I mean, for a lot of people, they might feel like the world of entrepreneurship versus the world of academia versus the world of, being a lawyer. These are separate silos. Like, how are you so easily like hopping between them?
I would say the common thread or the link across all of them is I've always been intrigued by untying knots and creating opportunities. Show me something that's kind of broken but capable of being fixed, and I'll try and figure out how to fix it. I say that metaphorically, not technically. Like I'm quite limited in my actual technical skills. I can fix some things around the house, but not everything. Across these disciplines, if the lever exists in one area, then that's the area I want to do it. So from my perspective over that period, it was really around how do I bring this data to life? How do I find a way to keep oxygen in this possibility? And so that allowed me to have the energy to carry it. I think that The shift wound up being more around the early exposures to GPT-3, 3.5, and then 4, and a network of connections that included people like you and the folks at Casetext and other places that were really moving forward, is that this gives us a view as to what the next future is going to be. Yes, some things are limited by data access, but there are far more foundational elements of legal practice and the profession of law that are going to be impacted as a result of language models and AI generally than that. And so that became my new driving thing. It's like, how do I contribute? How do I make sure that I'm understanding enough, but contributing it back? So academia is one way that people love doing it. They love digging in, explaining it in that way. I swore after finishing my LLM that I would never write anything longer than 5 pages again. Uh, and so my way of doing that is I love indulging my academic side by reading the papers, whether it's legal papers, technical papers, AI papers, but turning it into something that I can deliver back. This is no different than when I was a waiter during university. You have to mediate between the needs of the clients and the demands of the kitchen, and you have to figure out how to make it all work. I'm just viewing everything I've been doing in whatever chair since as some variation of the same. I know something, I can do something that can help this group over here if I can find a way to make it work. I say, is this something that I'm capable of understanding at a deeper level than the people who need the information right now? Yes. Is this something I can communicate to the people who need the information right now? Yes.
I mean, what I see is a couple of things that a lot of people that I talk to have in common. Like one is curiosity is a superpower, and
Yeah.
also like a passion for building. With that, I want to spend a little time on PGYA and Lockheed and how those fit together in your mind, and also like the firm thing. Just how does
Yeah.
it all tie together? What are you trying to accomplish right now? What's your focus?
The firm thing is experiencing it on the ground in a way to understand, to ensure that I really understand what's happening. Because you can only learn so much as a consultant. You can only learn so much as an educator. You have to really experience what the people that you're trying to support are experiencing. So that's what the firm thing is there for. PGYA, broad consulting, like I've done events for legal insurance companies and large law firms and small law firms and regulators and others. And that's really about giving them a big picture view of where the world is going, like resetting their expectations of what do you think is happening? Because here's what's actually happening and here's where things are going. So it was those capabilities that resulted in the Ontario Bar Association engaging me as their innovator in residence. And when they said you have to help lawyers figure out AI, I said, well, the best way to help them understand it is to put their fingers on the keyboards. I set out to develop with a company called Praxis AI, who had been working in online legal education in different capacities, or the people behind it, for a long time. And they had this really interesting embedded AI digital twin that was being used in master's level courses at big universities, where the professor's knowledge was embedded in this twin. So when the students had, the question at midnight on a Tuesday, they could ask the twin, and the twin would help the student get unblocked, understand the course materials, and move forward. And I said, are you guys doing anything in law? And they said, no, we're not. I said, let's figure this out. So I said to the OBA, I'm going to create an online learning platform for lawyers where everything that I think they need to know and everything that they think they need to know about AI is a resource in a traditional online environment. But Lockheed will be the digital twin inside that of me as the advisor to help them navigate the material and try everything. And it's powered by Claude 4. I mean, originally it was 3.5, and we can put any model behind it, but Claude 4 performs incredibly well, which means we can teach them everything from basic prompts to vibe coding, and they can experience it inside the tool. So that became the OBA AI Academy. And the Canadian Bar Association loved it so much that it's now available nationally. So the Canadian Bar Association has the AI Academy, basically pointing everybody to the OBA AI Academy. But as between Praxis, the technology company, and I, we said, we're learning a lot about this. We're going to do it with a view to saying, how do we take everything that we learned and make it available to voluntary bar associations in the US? Because if you are a solo law firm lawyer, in-house government, you don't have a big firm planning your AI future for you. You don't have somebody planning your training, telling you what tools to use. You're completely on your own. And those people look to their bar association, in particular, their small county bar associations. So Locky has become the environment where we can turn small bar associations up to a complete AI learning environment, all the material, all the prompt training courses, all of this, and the AI for as little as depending on how we package it, for them as little as $1 per member per year. And that's with the commitment that we will continue to update it as information comes through. GPT-5 comes up, we update it. Gemini 3 is coming up. If whatever paradigm shift needs to be reflected, we update it. But this image that I have behind me is why we've built what we built. And the focus is that there's a phenomenal number of people who have done nothing, who know nothing, and they're at risk of being left out of ever understanding it because the AI moves so fast. We have an opportunity now to give them, in self-paced, self-guided, but fully supported learning through Locky, the ability to say, oh, I get it. I do this, this happens. I do this, and this happens. Anytime they get stuck, they ask Locky inside their tool, tell me more about this. Locky draws from the course materials that they may or may not have read. For primary answer, it uses underlying tools to go to the web, do all sorts of other things, and pull things together. The bars that I've been talking to are really excited about this because every webinar they hold, they get two results. They hold a webinar, 50, 100 people show up, pay them, $50 to $150. And it's okay, but nobody comes away having learned practically what to do, having developed the skills. They've been told, but they haven't internalized it. And secondly, well, what about the other 1,000 or 2,000 members of their bar who didn't show up? Where are they at? So we're creating this opportunity now to help move people forward. And so, again, my sort of connection between all of these is the law firm work keeps me very close to the target audience I'm serving through Locky by understanding why it's not sufficient to say, oh, you should just use this package. You should use Spellbook and do everything. Well, what should I do with Spellbook? Well, you go ahead and use Spellbook. It's great. But law firms are entering a period of heavy transformational change. This isn't technology learning. It was technology learning 2 years ago, and it needs to be a little bit of technology learning now so that they can recognize the need for transformational change. Because if they continue to assume that buying an app will solve them and protect them for the next 12 months, they're doomed. We want to make sure that they have an ability to say, oh, I get it. I understand how this stuff works. And what we heard from the Ontario and the Canadian experience is we're moving people from being afraid of it to being educated consumers who can push back on the vendors and ask for explanations, not because we've armed them with words to say, but because they've actually learned to say, when it calls out to the internet, is it making one call? Is it predetermined the databases that it's calling? So they're learning enough of how it works. It's got me super excited. The consulting part has sort of become a support now to Locky, that when people either on the Canadian side or the American side say, this is great, can you help our firm with like a broader session? Yes, I can do that. But Locky is the main thing because we have hundreds of thousands of lawyers who we have to sort of get on this path with us.
I think it's amazing that essentially like everyone that you're touching right now is benefiting from the years and years of experience and expertise that you put together. And I think that's a wonderful thing. A couple of things I want to ask you before we end, though, is just any advice you have for people that are like hearing all this and they're like, oh my God, I don't know how Colin keeps it all balanced or juggles these things. What's a tip you have for them for keeping it together?
The main tip, which has taken me a long time to learn too, is that as much as you want to indulge your curiosities, you have to identify what's the most important thing to you. So it took me a long time to really make sure that I wasn't letting my work take away from my life. I've 4 kids. Oldest is 28. We have triplets that are 25. During my entrepreneurial stint of the past 10 years, I had to get 3 of them through university. One of our kids has special needs, had to manage that. So recognizing the importance of what you and only you can do in your life, then the pieces can come together better.
I think that's great advice. And kind of related to that is the last question I have, which is, at the end of the day for you, like what makes all of this stuff that you're working on worthwhile?
During my corporate years in the phone companies and I always had the sense of like, okay, I can do well in this environment, but what am I actually giving back to anybody? Like, yes, I've caused the phone company to make an extra $1 million. Good for them. Good for me. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's great. But I wasn't doing anything that I felt was leaving a lasting impact. With Canly, I began to see the possibility of like, oh, there are levers that I can figure out how to access and actually make a difference. And so I'm not so bold as to claim like, I'm going to hit like the full dent in the universe thing, but it's the North Star. Can I do something that is going to make a meaningful difference that wouldn't have happened had I not been the one to try it? That's the thing that keeps me going.
That's awesome. Well, for everyone who's been listening to this and is curious to learn more about you, how can they keep in touch with you?
I'm still active on Twitter, never left. Colin Lachance there. Occasionally on Blue Sky. LinkedIn is my main zone now, so you can find me easily. Love to connect on LinkedIn.
Well, Colin, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Tom, it's a pleasure. I always enjoy talking with you, and I appreciate being part of this series.
And for all of you watching, thank you so much. See you next time.
Thank you so much for watching the latest episode of the LaDroid Manifesto podcast. To keep in the loop about upcoming episodes, please subscribe to LaDroid Manifesto and you'll get notified. Thanks for watching. See you next time.